Let's have a little look at ATP Chengdu. We're going to go with the outrights. James, do you have any outrights?
Yeah, so Evans was the outright for this tournament, which was put up at 23 in the article. The big concern for me with Evans basically came about the conditions. I wasn't completely convinced that the humidity would be a huge issue for Evans, but I wasn't sure. And from what I've seen in this first round, where he almost lost, he was a breakdown in the final set. I am now a lot more concerned, I think, about the conditions for Evans. So Evans is going to be on my record at 23. If you wanted to follow, as I say, my big concern with the conditions was very quickly made apparent. So perhaps I would skip that one now that we've been given that bit of evidence. But yeah, as I say, that is the article tip. There are lots of good reasons to have backed Evans, the primary ones basically being about his form on the hard courts and against the top seed this week, Isner, and the high seed in his quarter, Dimitrov. But I'm a lot less sure of it than I was at the start of the week.
Okay, well, I'm going to get Rafa to call you back, James, just because you're a bit fuzzier than you are normally. But until then, Snize, let's have a little look at your outrights for Chengdu. We're going to go with Fritz outright at 19. Why is your reasoning?
So just a little bit about Chengdu, which is key to note. This is a tournament that is very, very quick. Very fast, one of the quickest on tour. It's played at almost 500 meters of altitude and on a very quick surface, which means that this inherently is a tournament that favors the large hitters and the big servers, of which Fritz is one. It actually has a lot of tie breaks. 54% of the matches last year featured at least a tie break. So definitely one to look out for the big hitters. Fritz is, I think, the future of American tennis. He's the one that has, the standard American recipe. He has the big thundering serve, the big forehand, but he also moves well and has a serviceable backhand, which many of his countrymen lack. He's looked great recently, played a lot of good tennis. He's obviously off Labour Cup duty, played well there as well. But the Labour Cup bound do get a few days extra off, so I don't think that will be a concern. So I think Fritz is one of the players that's able to go well here. He has a pretty nice draw as well. He's been drawn in the bottom section. He's going to face Bublik, and then he's going to face possibly Dimitrov or Orja Aliassime, who Orja Aliassime hasn't looked good for a long time. I think his body's breaking down. Dimitrov obviously had a great US Open run, but he is way too underpriced or overpriced in this section. So I think Fritz the value there.
Especially, Bublik, we had a close look at him last week and he had massive serving problems. I think it was in double digits for double faults, which obviously cost him in the end. What about Chung at 26? And then you can go on to Albo at 51, but Chung at 26.
So this is also another good price available at Unibet. Hyun Sung, I think many people have just forgotten just how good Sung is when he is on form. He's a former world number 19 as late as last year. But it's just that people have forgotten that because he hasn't played for a long time. He's been out of competition because of injuries, primarily a back injury that has kept him sidelined for 5 months of this season. But Sung, many make Djokovic comparisons to him. He has a fantastic all-around game, incredibly difficult to hit through, incredibly athletic, makes very few unforced errors. He made the Australian Open semi-final last year. Only took until a retirement against Roger Federer to get him out of there. So a very, very good player, and he's been in good form. He came back here at Chengdu and won the Challenger event in his comeback tourney, and then looked good at the US Open as well, making the third round. He's also been drawn in this lower part of the draw, so he and Fritz may be on collision course at semifinal stage. But I just really like his pathway here. We have a lot of people that are worth opposing in this section, with Orja Aliassime being the big seed, whom I really don't trust. So I think that Sung, if it can make a huge run here.
Okay, and the last one.
oh yeah,
And the last one of the outrights is Albo. Before we go over to James, 51, massive outsider.
Yeah, massive outsider here. Obviously a very big price, but I think it's value here. Obviously the big seed in his section, he's been drawn in the second quarter. Kyle Edmund lost in straight sets to Christian Garin, and he's already out of the tournament. The Brits keep disappointing. So anyways, he's going to face Pablo Carreño Busta.
They don't disappoint if you oppose them, do they?
No, that's true. So Benoit Paire, he said he'll maybe take this Chengdu off. He struggled with a virus a bit last week, played indoors, went deep in Mets, and it's unsure whether he'll even compete here, or if he competes, what kind of shape he will be in. This is normally not a time of the season that Paire does well anyway, so he's worth opposing. Looking at the immediate future, he's going to face Pablo Carreño Busta in the first round, and I think people are overrating Carreño Busta. Obviously, a former top 10 player, and he has made strides, but he's not that good yet. He's not at the top 10 level, but he's being priced like he is. Alba, on the other hand, usually does extremely well in this part of the world. He's won several titles on the challenger level here in China, and has great memories from here. And so I think that the Moldovan is a bit underrated. He's been able to transcend his earlier limits this season, obviously going well at winning Delray Beach earlier in the year, and just being great on surface that he's normally hasn't been. A bit of a late bloomer. John Isner is a seed we have to oppose here. Hasn't struggled with fitness, obviously off Labour Cup duty, and he's declining a bit. So yeah, I think that just the opportunities in the draw open up well here for a long shot, and obviously this being just a small tournament with the larger seeds, maybe having your eyes on the bigger prizes later on in the swing, you take a few shots here.
Okay, James, you found us some value with a bit of a single one. Lai and Gerasimov. How'd you break this one down?
Yeah, sorry. So just quickly to go back to Snize's point, Isner hasn't, I don't think he's even made more than a semi-final in China since 2010. So, there's a lot of reasons to oppose the top of the field. I'm not sure that I'm as happy with my selection on Evans, but I like all of Snize's selections, and certainly opposing someone Dimitrov's priced at 7. I think Shapovalov's priced at 7. And Isner's priced at about 6.5. They're not prices that I would be happy taking. Yeah, and I would be wanting to oppose that. Okay, so in terms of this match, so Gerasimov against Lee. So the first thing about this match is the conditions. Chengdu has, I think, had either the most or second most tie breaks of any match, of any event, on tour so far, which is surprising on the one hand in that it's kind of a medium-paced, high humidity hard court. So that's not usually going to be ideal circumstances for tie breaks, but it's also at 500 meters of altitude. And for whatever reason, it has had a lot of tie breaks. So the first bet is the first set tie break at 5.4. Gerasimov is relatively serve orientated as a player. He played well last week indoors, tends to do most of his best work indoors, and tends to be very consistent. But his game is based around power. It's based around having a good first strike. So he's not as good on the return. Lee, unusual for an Asian player in the sense that he isn't really return orientated at all. He's got an excellent return game, very effective when he's on song. But really, he is also quite a serve orientated player, quite a big hitter, likes to get the first strike in, and often will keep it close with better players, at least for a set or two. So I think either, as I say, first set at 5.4, tie-breaking match I think was 2.8. That also seems worth it. And then 3 sets at 2.95. The rationale behind that basically being half statistical. If you look at their respective matches, Lee especially has a very good record of taking people the distance. But he also has an excellent record of beating players where he shouldn't. And you can actually get him, I think, at 3.9 now with Bet Hard. It's drifted out from 3.4, which I think is probably closer to being right in this match. Gerasimov very consistent, so I'm not sure I'd want to be opposing him at 3.4, but if you can get 3.9, that's definitely worth a bet as well.
What about a little bit of Gerasimov to win 2-1? Yeah,
so it's very much what I considered. I have an issue with opposing good underdogs. I think that's where most of the value comes from on the tour. So given that Lee is someone I could totally see winning this match, and Yerasimov is coming off an indoor hard, a good week on the indoor hard, I'm not sure I want to push my luck. But yes, I would expect 2-1 to Yerasimov to be also a good bet.
Okay, let's move on to you, Snize, since you've been sitting there very quietly for at least 30 seconds. We're going to go with Chung minus 2.5 games versus Zhao Souza at 1.76. Rationale?
Yeah, happy to be back here. I'm not really that silent of a type, as you may have noticed. I like talking, so yeah, we'll get right into it.
Yeah, you listen, the yin and yang between the pair of you is absolutely brilliant. It's like good cop, bad cop.
Indeed. So yeah, I've already spoken a bit about how good Chung is when he's back on form, and I feel that this tournament that he can go well in. Joao Sousa is a player that in the last stage of his career primarily was a clay court grinder. He's been able to transcend that and perform well on other surfaces, notably made a round of 16 at Wimbledon, and he also made Gstaad semi-final on clay. But apart from that, hasn't really been a great season for him, and especially on hard court. He's only gone 2-5 since the Australian Open, and he's on an 0-3 losing streak on the hard courts during the North American hard court swing. He's also coming from St. Petersburg indoors in Russia, and he did play really well, reached the semifinals, but this is a very, very tough changeover here now. He's played a late night match European time, which would already be into the next day on the 22nd China time, with Chorich, 3-setter, lost there. Now he's going to have to take a flight. I assume he flew yesterday, the 22nd. May not have been able to get a direct flight even. So he'd arrive probably late today, and he's not going to be accustomed to the conditions at all, and he's just going to transcend from playing indoors, high bouncing, slower indoor surface to a blazing fast, lower bouncing hard court. And just the matchup itself, we saw this matchup last year actually, high bouncing slow courts, and just Sousa just does not have the weapons to hit through the defenses of Chung. Chung won quite easily, winning 6-3, 6-4 in that meeting last year. And I think that Chung will continue to exploit this head-to-head matchup. I think that he has a great chance to go deep in this tournament. The conditions suit him. Sousa's on a tough labor here. And I've gone with him to win there, minus 2.5 games.
Yeah, I mean, that looks decent, that 1.76. Okay, just wrap it up then. We got Radu Albe on the money line against Carino Busta at 2.65. That seems a massive price.
Yeah, definitely. So this is also a match I touched upon a bit with my outright selection and my long shot on Alba, and I just think that Carreño Busta is just being evaluated like he's still a top 10 player, which he simply isn't. Alba is a player that's been around to top 40 level. He's played extremely well, performed consistently as an underdog, pushing the best players. There are, I would say, really just similarly ranked in, when it comes to the level of the performances, and the matchup as well. No player will be able to blow the other off the court. This will be a grindy matchup. Both players are very consistent and very good movers. So it's going to be an all-out war there. And whoever is the most consistent on the day, whoever is the most confident on the day will be able to prevail. I think this should be closer to a pick-em price, and definitely huge value in Alba to win outright.
Okay, well, I mean, you boys are going to keep flicking out your articles. Go over to oddsmarket.com if you want to keep in touch with the lads.